Well, talking about HUD, HUD, the Housing and Urban Development, with another scandal from the 1980s because it always comes back to Ronald Reagan. That's right, once again we return to HUD under Secretary Samuel Pierce, who proves that he cares not for the tired, the poor, the huddled masses yearning to breathe free. Though to be fair, no one else really seemed to care in this whole thing either. Back in June of 2022, the Chicago Housing Authority, or CHA, fired 16 employees for fraud, but this isn't exactly anything new for CHA. Now, there are lots of moving parts within this particular scandal, so bear with me. In an effort to decentralize public housing, the Chicago Housing Authority wanted to buy different properties throughout the city, and in order to get the money for the renovations on these properties, they went under HUD's program. However, in an effort to get these funds from the federal government, what they did was they underestimated how much money would be needed to renovate each property. For example, if the CHA consultant said it would be $100,000 to renovate a property, what they would do instead is when they submitted paperwork to HUD, they told HUD, well, we only need $50,000 to renovate this property, which, for one, that's already bad enough, but they did this for multiple properties. The Chicago Housing Authority knew that HUD had a cap on how much could be used for a property, which is why they underestimated so that they could make sure they got that sweet, sweet federal money. Once the CHA got said money from HUD, they now need architects. One of these contracted companies was Archetype 3. What they do is they create the plans that renovate these different properties. And by the way, not all of the people that were architects were licensed to be architects. And their plans were awful because they did things like ignore building and fire safety codes. To put these crappy plans into place, the Chicago Housing Authority then needed to hire builders who would implement these particular plans. Now, if they were a decent company, they went ahead and built to make sure that the place was up to code. Depending on the builders, some of them got paid, some of them didn't get paid. The builders would then blame the architects, telling them that their plans were crappy and they didn't know what they were doing, and then the architects would blame the builders, saying they didn't know what they were doing. So this cluster fluffle occurred because no one was enforcing any of the guidelines at any level, and there wasn't really any oversight. HUD didn't follow up on CHA to make sure that they were doing what they needed to do. CHA didn't follow up on the architects or the builders very often to make sure that they were doing what they needed to do. All of these properties ended up being scattered slums, essentially, and many of them didn't have heat, which is definitely not good in winter in Chicago. Also, apparently stealing bricks was a really big issue around this time, and some of the properties had so much of the bricks stolen from them that they collapsed. Many of these properties also ended up just being demolished and didn't have anything new built in its place because it was just too much money. So because of all this and lack of oversight and poor planning, millions of dollars went to waste, and Chicago still has a housing problem.